was receiving my second initiation from Srila Prabhupada so that I could care for the deities. And but I didn't know anything about Gayatri Mantra, and I didn't know that there was a way that you said it. So Prabhupada went like this, he just went like this. And I didn't know what he was doing. So I just looked at him, and he went like this again. And I thought, oh, well, maybe he wants my beads. So I took my beads out of my bead, and he's like, no. So he took my hand in his hand and took my thumb and put my thumb on each of the places and to show me how to chant the Gayatri Mantra. And many years later, and I don't remember if I read it somewhere or heard it somewhere, but I became aware that there were times when the guru, knowing his disciple to be not pure enough to care for the deities, would touch that person to purify them enough to be with Krishna on the altar. So I felt very, well, that makes sense. I certainly needed that purification. When I got to Boston, the Jagannath deities were badly cracked. They were very large. And so Satsrupa asked me to write to Prabhupada and ask him what we should do about it. So I did, and he said they should be put in the sea and that new deities should be carved. And also I asked him at the time, Lord Jagannath his clothes weren't being changed at night. So I wrote to Prabhupada and asked him if Lord Jagannath could wear pajamas at night. And he wrote back and said, yes, that would be very nice. Earlier that morning in the temple, like I said, it was a very old house. It's not the temple that they now have in Boston. It was on North Beacon Street. And there was some hooks. There was the men's restroom was on one over here and the ladies over here, and there was a couple hooks on the wall in between. And Prabhupada was going into the men's room, and he noticed some japa beads hanging on one of these hooks. And he took those beads and he said, these beads are crying. They should never be here next to the stoolroom. They should always be around your neck or in a bead bag. But it was, when he said these beads are crying, I think it was a really important lesson about how sacred these beads really are. Satsrupa and Suhotra and I did a radio show once a week at it's either Northeastern or Northwestern University, whichever one's in Boston. It was quite a big radio station with a lot of people listening. And we would pick a story from Krishna book, and Satsrupa would write a little script, and then we would go to the station and do this dramatic thing that would be on the radio for an hour each week. And one time when Prabhupada was in New York, Satsrupa took him tapes of the last 3 or 4 shows that we had done. And Satsrupa was always Krishna, Suhotra was whatever demon was in that story, and I was Mother Jasoda. And so it was the story of Kaliya, Krishna subduing the Kaliya serpent. And when Mother Jasoda is seeing Krishna like wrapped in the coils of Kaliya, and she's just crying his name and just the utmost desperation. So I was just, really crying Krishna's name. And Srila Prabhupada said to Satsrupa, stop the tape. He said, who is that? And Satsrupa said, that's Sumati. And Prabhupada said, you tell her to always cry for Krishna like that. So that's my favorite the story that I try to keep in my heart, even though I don't cry for Krishna like that. But, I was brand new. I just loved, I had been chanting for 2 years because I had heard it on the mantra on the radio as a part of the musical Hair. I never saw devotees, didn't know there was such a thing as a devotee. I didn't even know Krishna was the name of God. It was just my favorite song. As soon as I heard it, I just loved the song and I sang it all the time. So we came to New Vrindavan and I was just lost. I felt I didn't know anyone. There was only, my only association in Washington was the 4 or 5 brahmacharis that lived there. So once we got to New Vrindavan, I was on my own. And I remember sitting in a Bhagavad-gita class. Do you remember that devotee Ishan? Ishan was giving Bhagavad-gita class. And he was saying, all I remember was he said, if you want some service to do and you don't have any and you're not sure what to do, just pray to Prabhupada and he'll send you some. So later that day, I was sitting outside under a tree trying to read Bhagavad-gita, but I couldn't understand it, and so I was just sitting there, and then I suddenly remembered what Ishan had said, so I just in my mind said, Srila Prabhupada, could you send me some service to do, please? And instantly, this woman walked up to me and said, there's going to be 3 weddings tonight. Could you go over into that field and pick flowers? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And I honestly felt like Srila Prabhupada was walking beside, it was almost like I could see him, but I felt his presence. Like, it was, to me, it was very, very mystical and miraculous because I really at that time had no sense of Prabhupada or Krishna or any of it. It was just all so new. But I knew that he was there. And it was very powerful and very loving and wonderful. And I think I was just most struck and am still struck always by his love for Krishna and his faith and his just I wouldn't know how else to say it, just his absolute surrender and love for Krishna that I would hear in his voice when he spoke of Krishna. On one level, I was very much afraid of Prabhupada because, he was also very stern and the devotees were just very, very strict and about the rules and regulations, and I was always a little frightened. But at the same time, whenever Prabhupada would specifically talk about Krishna, there was so much love in his voice that it just gave me faith in Krishna, that Krishna was actually real. And that faith continues to increase. And I feel so grateful to Prabhupada. I'm not a really good disciple anymore. But I thank him every day for my life and that Krishna is in my life and that all of my most intimate friends are all devotees of Krishna. And I hope that someday I'll again be a good disciple, a good daughter. Je anilo prem